So hello, this is Mete Yurtsever. Today, Formula for Creating Value reaches out to Denmark, and my special guest is Camilla Nørgaard Jensen.
Beautiful.
Was it good?
It was a great pronunciation.
Thank you, Camilla. So let me briefly introduce you to our listeners. Camilla earned her master's in industrial design and engineering from Aalborg University in Denmark, where she collaborated with Lego Group and MIT Media Lab on the next generation of interactive robotic play scenarios. She has worked and consulted for many award-winning entrepreneurs and design firms. And in 2007, she moved to Arizona State University and continued her work on hybrid physical and digital learning and play experiences. And you have a PhD on value creation through creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship. That makes you a perfect guest for my podcast.
I'm so glad to be invited. Thank you.
Thanks. Shall we start with your PhD dissertation? There are very interesting concepts there. I'm mostly interested in this tacit knowledge to explicit knowledge. Can you take us through a bit?
Yeah, I can share a bit about that. So really the basic of all business value creation originates in tacit knowledge. So tacit knowledge are ideas, hunches, like just that gut feeling, that sense that there's something here. It could also be represented in skills or abilities. So if you have, say, the ability to ride a bicycle, that would be a tacit piece of knowledge that you have. Characteristic for all tacit knowledge, it's difficult to articulate. It's also typically difficult to put into words, like this new idea that you have, in a way that other people actually get it, right? Because words can be so ambiguous. And it's also difficult to teach somebody to ride the bicycle by just explaining to them in words how to ride a bicycle. Actually, tacit knowledge is best shared through shared experience. So you do things together, you do like shadowing or apprenticeship-like activities, and you learn by doing. You learn by brain on, body on activities. And conversation, of course.
Which is not very used techniques or methods in our work daily life, right?
No, oftentimes we're trapped in our heads, and we fail to make use of, for instance, our hands, which is also a big part of the way we can access tacit knowledge. Like we can build metaphorical models. We can activate parts of our brains that are docile because of our modern living style.
I think it's neurologically proven that also your brain. I mean, you are smarter. You get, or you think smarter when you use both your hands and your mind, right?
Yeah, there's actually a study that shows that if you use your fine motor skills, for instance, in fine building activities, you actually build synapses between the left and the right brain hemisphere. So that makes you a more all-around thinker.
Well, that's exactly what I wanted to say. You put it beautifully. Of course, this is what is more technical explanation about it.
So maybe I go in and explain a little bit about the explicit knowledge piece of it too, because that's the contrast to tacit knowledge. So we established that the starting point for all value in the business world is the tacit knowledge. But really, you cannot scale tacit knowledge. You can just walk around and say, oh, I have this idea, I have this skill, but it's not really transferable, and it's difficult and expensive to share as well. But if you're able to make the tacit knowledge explicit, then you can easily share it. And explicit could be, like, what's an example? So one example that I sometimes use of tacit and explicit knowledge is that I know exactly what my mom's apple pie tastes like. Like, I know the crunch of it, I know the sweetness, the sourness, and it just puts me in this experiential frame of mind, and it brings back good memories, right? That's all tacit. And the explicit version of that could be the recipe. Like, how many teaspoons of sugar, how many deciliters of milk, and so on. goes in there. But still, it doesn't mean that somebody who follows the recipe is going to get exactly the same result, because as you put those ingredients together, there's still tacit knowledge that goes into that process, right? You got to, like, knowing how the dough is supposed to feel to be just right. That's also tacit knowledge. And it's actually a good example of tacit knowledge being an embodied feeling, because it's something you sense. And again, it's difficult to put into words. You might be able to explain, oh, it's got to be bounty like, and then use a metaphor that fits.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, we also have this in this cooking. For the dough, we say this is like your how do you call it? The ear.
Your earlobe. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. There are those sort of metaphors, whatever. Exactly as you mentioned. Great example. Yeah.
Yeah. So that can be helpful to use metaphors in translating tacit knowledge into explicit knowledge.
So you describe about this value creation life cycle, right?
Yeah, I've created a figure. It's part of my PhD work, and I'm going to be holding it up for you as I talk you through it, and then the listeners can find it on your website.
Notes, yes.
It starts with the tacit knowledge realm, and that's really in the area of creativity. It's the hunch, the idea. And that's where you explore what could the potentials be, what is the problem to be solved, and you also uncover what are the needs of the different stakeholders. So it's about the problem framing, because the problem framing so influences the problem solution, right? If you don't know where to look for the solution, it kind of sets the angle for that exploration. And it also helps build trust within the innovation team, because the creativity happens when ideas collide. It's almost like a chain reaction, an association game, where if I say one thing, that makes you think about something else. And oh, by the way, once upon a time, I happened to do so and so, and that resulted in so and so. So getting those things going requires that the team has been socialized in a way that makes them trust one another and makes them open to being vulnerable and sharing ideas.
So that's exactly actually the initial step of the design thinking process, right? This is like, sort of like the empathy phase. Can we say that?
Yeah, you could definitely say that. It's about understanding both your stakeholders, the users, but it's also about having a focus on the innovation capacity of the innovation team. So it's about their knowledge, their skills, and their attitude. And it's also about building that capacity of innovation where they're open enough with one another to share wild ideas. Because first you have all of the obvious ideas, the ones that you might share where you don't make yourself feel stupid for sharing it. Like it's low risk, like low hanging fruit, right? And then, then you got to get to the far out ideas, like the ones that are never going to work. And then you have to push beyond those before you get to the right ideas. But if you just stay within your comfort zone and you just stick with the safe things to say within the innovation team, you're never going to push beyond the far out ideas and get to the right ideas.
Exactly. First, you have to diverge and then converge.
Yeah, that too. But you gotta divert enough that you might even be uncomfortable sharing those crazy things, quote unquote. So after the creativity phase, I've actually when the listeners are looking at this thing, they'll see that it's like a blue staircase. And it's because as you move up the steps in the staircase, you add in terms of value creation. So you could say that there's time on one axis, and then there's the added value on the other axis. And after the creativity phase comes the innovation phase. And that's where you figure out, now you kind of know what direction you're going in, but you don't know what the right solution looks like or how it works. And making it work is a big part of that too. And that's where you're reducing it to practice. So it's the process that's necessary for a team to go through to make things explicit enough that they can take out a patent on a new invention, for instance. And it's also where they go through different iterations of prototypes, sometimes divided into prototypes, and proto-products. So that's like how advanced it is. Like a prototype, that could just be a type of design research activity. Like if you're designing an Internet of Things system and you want to explore what are the most important features, you might have cards for a card sorting exercise where you have the future users sort through how to rank, like in order of importance, the different features that they want to see in your solution. So that could be a prototype. If there's a prototype, there's aspects of what you bring to them that actually works, like the intended final solution will work, but it's not all around finished and done. And then with a proto product, you actually have something of value to the end user that they're hopefully also willing to pay for. So it could be like a paid pilot, that could be a proto product. A lot of softwares could be said to be proto products because you get like the next version of Zoom, for instance, and the next version. It's like it still brings value, but it can still be improved upon. The last phase up here in the value creation life cycle, that's about the exploitation. So once you have a satisfying solution, you can exit the innovation process. And you do that up here once you've made things explicit enough that they can be mass produced. So it might be that you have a code that can be compiled and then is ready to be launched. It might be that you're ready to, you have the blueprint, you are ready to build a house, a product, whatever, and it can be scaled. So it's explicit knowledge at this point in time. And you're ready to launch it into the world. You can actually send that out to multiple users or customers.
Great. Okay, so you go through all of these steps with your clients, right? And so at which stage actually you get use of the play and the serious play actually with the Lego?
Yeah, well, it's different what phase I come in at. When I engage with a client, I typically try to assess where are they on this staircase.
Okay, yes.
Creation. So typically what I notice is if they're stuck in their innovation process, and that's typically when people come to me, if there's something in their innovation process that's not working the way that they wanted to, if they're not accelerating the way they're hoping to, or if knowledge is not spread throughout the innovation, it can be that they have trouble incorporating a culture of innovation in their organization. So one of the first things that I diagnose is, are they stuck or are they avoiding a task in activity? Are they stuck in or avoiding a part of the innovation phase? Or are they stuck within or avoiding a part of the entrepreneurship phase? Because that gives me a sense of what type of intervention sounds so medical, but what kind of workshop, or should it be a playful solution or should it be a gameful solution? If it's in the exploration phase, it's typically a more playful solution that's needed. If it's in the exploitation phase, where the goals are defined and they just need to figure out how to get there and how to keep employees motivated, it's typically more of a gameful method that could be used. So we've talked not yet on this call, but we met through the Lego Serious Play community.
Yes.
So that could be an example of something that's great in the early phases, something that's playful methodology.
Actually, you also used you did a workshop that promotes the mental health in the workplace, and that sounds very interesting. That especially in the pandemic times, I mean this.
Yes. and it actually was this fall. It was a company that does friction welding, of all things, here in the northern part of Denmark. But it just shows that this type of work it's industry agnostic. Like you could be working with any industry, and the same things are applicable. So really what they wanted to achieve, their objectives for this was they wanted to show their employees that they do care about their mental health. So the owners recognize that if my employees are happy and thriving, have a lot of vitality and engagement, they're going to do better work. And this is a production company. So they're also going to be more productive. They are going to do better problem solving, troubleshooting, debugging the production machines, and they're going to make fewer mistakes, which could be both expensive for the company, could also potentially be dangerous when you're working in heavy machinery, right?
Definitely.
And it also was very important for them that people in the different department had a good relationship to one another. Because that's when they can do collective problem solving, maybe even before something becomes an important problem. So we're really building that sense of being part of the same tribe as well in that workshop. So we used Lego Serious Play, which is a method that can be used for various purposes, from conveying a vision, building a strategy, accelerating the innovation process. But it's really at its core, it's about building a model in Lego. And then you tell the story that you've embedded into that model. So it's almost like you had a three-dimensional mind map to build in a response to a prompt that the facilitator gives you. And in this vitality at work workshop, we were looking into what are things that boosts your energy at work, and what are things that drain you for energy at work. So they built metaphorical models of that. So it was a conversation starter to have some of those really important conversations that people typically don't have, because they don't have that space or that prompt that
exactly
initiates those potentially difficult conversations. And they got really deep into it, and then they got a lot of knowledge, like literally knowledge on the table, because the physical models were on the table. And then they could ask each other, so what does it mean that your Lego minifigure has that propeller on its head?
Yeah.
And they got to be curious about one another in a way that didn't seem like they were snoopy or anything. It just seemed like, hey, I'm interested. I care about you.
That's a very amazing experience. I also had a couple of, let's say, sessions with that. So you're given a set of, you don't even get to choose your pieces, but with the given pieces, you can bring such meaning to those Lego pieces and whatever you construct. And no one would think it is. I mean, if you would show it to 10 people, no one would get even 10% of what you want to say there. But it helps you definitely to shape up your thoughts, and you find meanings. It's amazing experience, really.
Yeah, like what you're saying is that you could have built something that's your version of what brings you joy at work. And then if I looked at that model and I had not heard your story, I wouldn't know that that's the meaning in the model, because to me it's just an abstract looking Lego model, really. But it's all about the story. Like the Lego bricks are really just a vehicle for sharing tacit knowledge.
Exactly.
And I found it to be super powerful. I also used it in my PhD research. I was looking into how might we have more holistic ways of approaching innovation, especially when it comes to emerging technologies. So the implications of nanotechnology, for instance, are not fully understood, the long-term environmental, societal implications. So I brought together people from 11 different disciplines and ran a Lego Serious Play workshop, because having people from sustainable engineering, material experts, but also people from philosophy and from communication and from biodesign and from design, it adds different perspectives. So you kind of get a 360-degree view on it, on the topic matter. And for that, Lego serious play really accelerated that knowledge sharing, because it takes the jargon out of their communication. They don't just barricade themselves into their disciplinary silos, how we all fit, and we have the lingo that we use within our discipline, and people from other disciplines don't necessarily understand what we're talking about. But the thing with when you have sufficiently complex problems to solve, and that could be environmental, it could be societal, they don't come neatly organized into those disciplinary silos. They're like big and messy. So we need to collaborate across the silos. We actually need to break those silos down. And I think that's where a lot of innovation departments are struggling.
Definitely. And actually, as a material, also like Lego, as compared to, let's say, Play-Doh, whatever. But Play-Doh is also maybe one way of making up models or metaphors. But Lego is much more safe, I believe, right? Because you cannot go wrong too much with with Lego.
As long as you don't take your shoes off and step on the Lego, they're pretty safe. But yeah, I think there is something about a lot of people have grown up with Lego, so there's a familiarity, and also the metaphors are already in certain pieces of Lego. I'm not thinking so much about just a square brick, though any brick can mean anything in Lego serious play, But if you see like a chain, or you see a flower, it might, or coins, that might bring you to build about certain metaphors. And I don't think people see the same thing in Play-Doh. That's more like having a blank sheet of paper.
True.
Though it is three-dimensional.
True. But you don't get to interpret what they did, so people tell it anyhow, right? So it's not like a Turkish coffee sort of sorcery. I mean, like this.
No,
you don't say this piece means that. This piece means that. No, you just it's just a
Whoever builds the Lego serious play model owns it and owns the meaning of it. So I don't get to say, oh, it looks like what you're really trying to say is so and so. No, I never do that. That would be that would be outside of the method for sure.
True.
Add to the Turkish coffee.
Okay, and maybe we talk about also a little bit on the the session you had with improv, which is another interest of mine.
Yeah, well, you just completed, what was it, 300 hours of improv theater?
Yes.
So that
it's a sort of it. I think it's not exactly improv as such, but it's quite. I think they're family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I view applied improv. I should probably call it applied improv, because it's just like serious play. And when we do like Lego serious play, we're not just playing to play, we're playing with a purpose. And the same thing with applied improv. It's based on some principles that are really conducive to creating a good culture in organizations. For instance, some of the principles behind improv theater is make your partner look good and accept the offering. So it's like if you propose, if we had an improv scene, you might say, "Hold, I got a gun," and in an improv scene, or in real life, I might say, "Oh, that's not a gun. That's just your finger." If we're playing improv, that would just make it all fall flat to the ground, right? And the same thing in communication in real life. If we constantly shoot people's ideas down, or what they offer up to us, we're not going to go anywhere. But
we just have to keep it going and build on it.
Yeah, exactly. You know exactly what I mean. So applied improv can be really useful in organizations. It can be helpful in order to practice thinking on your feet. It can be useful for people who need to get comfortable, like just improvising, building onto other people's ideas, or presenting. It's a way of being in the world. It's a playful way of being. It's where you get to experiment. And I was actually introduced to applied improv theater by my former PhD advisor. He's a professor at Arizona State University. His name is Tom Seeger. And he recognized the power of improv theater. The problem he was trying to solve was that his engineering students, many of them were super introverted and shy. So some of them had a problem presenting at conferences. Also, if you Google public speaking, like that's the most Googled fear, like the fear of public speaking. So it's not just engineers. But it's also crucial when you're a researcher or a scientist or an engineer that you're able to convey your research findings, right? So he teamed up with a professor in the theater school called Boyd Branch, and they developed this class for engineers and researchers about improv theater. And that's how I got acquainted with it. I've since gone to conferences about it. One is called Customer. It's about using it in STEM research. That's actually where I got the Dr.Lego nickname. We were tasked to listen to each other's stories about what we do, like kind of interview one another in triads, and then come up with a superhero or supervillain name for one of them based on the crazy stories that came out. So I do make use of applied improv, both in the work that I do with Bayer, but also in one of the most recent Lego Serious Play workshops that I did online. And I was prototyping it with my Applied Improv Network group. They're based in Phoenix, but because of COVID-19, we've started doing our sessions on Zoom instead of in the library.
And it works, right?
Yeah, and it's wonderful for me since I'm not in Phoenix right now and I can still participate. So I used Lego Serious Play because one of the overlaps between Lego Serious Play and improv theater is the notion in Lego Serious Play that any brick can mean anything. So you could say that it's a flexible offering. And one of the exercises that I had them do was to just pick 5 random bricks and put them together in a random way. And then I gave them challenges. Like the first one had to describe how their new figure was actually a supercomputer, or how it was what dogs think about, or how it's falling in love, or like random concepts.
Wow.
So the same structure can mean various different things. It trains people's cognitive flexibility and creative flexibility.
Yes, make new connections. I mean, like, which looks very apart and distant, but it definitely helps you to provoke your thinking. I mean, definitely.
Yeah. So that was a lot of fun, and they actually asked if we could do it again. So I'm hoping to get more opportunities to combine more Lego Serious Play and improv theater.
Great. So I was wondering about Dr. Lego thing. Also, it's good that you mentioned where you got it from. Okay, so what I'm also curious about, you mentioned about within the companies, it's about the culture, it's about their approach to innovation. You also do some consulting on the on incubation centers for corporates, right? You talked about a Bayer example. Can you tell us a little bit what was the issue for them and how you deal with it?
Yeah, I work with Bayer and their corporate innovation efforts. So they've realized that in order to do useful and accelerated innovation, they need structured processes for that. And they also need to go outside of those silos that we just talked about. So they take a more venture capitalist inspired approach to it than what they used to. So we use something that's called the lean startup methodology. And it's really about realizing that all innovation is based on assumptions. Like we assume that something is a good idea, but it's very risky to just act on that assumption what's way smarter is to take almost like a scientist mindset and say, we're going to de-risk by actually testing our assumptions. And we do that by externalizing, like making our tacit assumptions more explicit. And that could be through bringing a prototype to users and have them interact with that and see what their reactions are. So they actually go through a process of testing these hypotheses, these assumptions, and then converting it into real knowledge. And that just means that at the end of the day, or at the end of the innovation process, they actually have ensured that something is an actual problem for the users. Otherwise, you can do what I call a technology push. Like you can say, "Oh, we have this technology. I'm sure the world is going to love that." But,
love it, yeah.
but then the marketing, you're a marketing man, right? Then,
Yes.
then you also realize that then you get overworked because it's a hard sell if it doesn't solve an actual problem. So step one,
Exactly.
when I work with the corporate innovation, is we got to ensure that we're solving an actual problem we're solving, that somebody wants to pay to have solved. We also
Not a solution without a problem, I mean.
exactly. And then the second step in that is also we got to ensure that we're able to solve their problem. And that's the innovation phase that I shared earlier on. Like, of course, there's also some creativity to it, more than a real staircase. Maybe it's slopes. But it's figuring out like what are the nitty-gritty that goes into solving this and doing those prototypes and getting the reactions from users till you have a viable solution. So you got to make sure that you can actually do it. But then there's also the step of, well, should you be doing it? So that's more about aligning this innovation project with the strategy of the organization. Like, does this fit with where you want to be in 5 years from now? Maybe it does, maybe it does not. Maybe it doesn't seem ethical based on your values. There's so many things that goes into it. Or it could be that there are competitors that are better suited to make use of this opportunity.
And actually, what is your role there? Because by companies like that, I mean, they're used to R&D, they are used to make products and whatever. But what is your real value for them? I mean, like, is it you're just putting them into? I mean, you're orientating them towards the right direction, or you're training their people, or what is exactly?
Yeah, I think it's a three-pronged one. I think it's about having the knowledge about the workings of innovation and about that knowledge conversion, and bringing them awareness to exchanging assumptions for real knowledge, and that step-by-step process. It's also about the skills to actually do it, and then it's about the attitude. And those things all play in when it comes to creating a culture of innovation. And what I help do is to create like a program that we take the innovation teams through, where they have a kickoff. We do a boot camp, typically around a little further than halfway through a 12-week program. And in that boot camp, we ensure that that we have the right idea, and then we help the team get the future stage planned so that we can ensure that they get the idea right. So having the right idea and getting the right idea right. Those are the major steps in it, because you can have a great idea, but what if you don't execute on it the right way? Getting ideas are typically easy, and it's the cheap part of the innovation process.
So about the wheel of knowledge, which is another important concept that you clarified in your dissertation. Can we talk about that?
Yes, for sure. I'm actually pretty sure that that's what landed me the work with Bayer, because the leader of the global transformational innovation efforts we had a conversation about this model, and he recognized that these are the steps required in order to do sustainable innovation. So we talked about it before. It kind of maps onto the staircase model. You can see these ones. So the socialization part, that's key when it comes to the creativity phase. The loop that we have here of externalizing, for instance, in the shape of a prototype, that's key to the innovation phase. And the internalization in that phase, that's all about making that explicit knowledge tacit. So that's where users, for instance, interact with a prototype and understand it in an embodied way and provide feedback. And that loop persists. That's an iterative process until you're actually done with the innovation process, right? Once you have a satisfying solution, then you can start making a business out of it. Then you're ready to launch. You're combining explicit knowledge with explicit knowledge. So you would have a blueprint, you have maybe physical components that you put together. If you're IKEA, it might be legs of a table that you put together with the tabletop. Those would be explicit representations of knowledge.
Camilla, we are approaching towards the end, and I have a signature question of my podcast. What is your formula for creating value?
For creating value? Well, I'd have to go back to one of the things that I started with, saying that the source of all business value, that's tacit knowledge. So in that sense, since tacit knowledge is so expensive to transfer because it's not scalable unless you make it explicit and put it into manuals and whatnot, you create value for going through the steps of the wheel of knowledge, like going through the socialization where your tacit knowledge meets my tacit knowledge, then you into the loop where tacit knowledge is being made explicit through the externalizations, could be in prototypes. And then there's the internalization phase where somebody interacts with that prototype and makes that. So the prototype would be the explicit representation of something. And they make that tacit, like they made it embodied to themselves, they experience it. And then once you've done enough iterations in the loop, you have a good enough solution that you can then bring to scale and combine explicit and explicit knowledge. So I think that's how you create the scalable business value.
Definitely.
From a knowledge point.
Great. Well, that's all it counts. I mean, finally, we've been so much tired of trying the other way around. I mean, what we have in our hand and to push it. I mean, like as you call it, technology push, or so we have enough of that. So I think.
I think we do, and I think the other way around, looking at what's the actual need, what's the actual problem to be solved in the world, how can we add value, that's way more motivating. And a lot of what people talk about is also why companies approach me is, our employees are not engaged. But what corporations really need to know about people is people are meaning-seeking creatures. Like they need their work to be purposeful. So if we take a starting point in, like, let's solve this problem, then it's way more meaningful. And then if in the process that we apply these brain-friendly methods that are hands-on and brains-on and super engaging, then we've come a long way. So it's about doing the right thing and then applying the right methods to get there at an accelerated pace.
Great. Camilla, thank you very much. And what is the best way to reach out to you?
So in terms of the best places to reach me, LinkedIn is a great place. I check that every single day. Another place to read more about my work is to look at bluetrampoline.com. It's where we do some of the innovation acceleration work. And then there's the British company Serious Work, or ProMeet, where we do a lot of Lego serious play.
Great. I'll include all of them in the show notes.
Thank you.
So thank you very much for your time again.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you.